Hi everybody. I had something fancier planned for doing all sorts of in-depth discussion of MBTI, but then I figured, well, it's almost the summer solstice and here we have our garden. It's past its first set of blooms, but it's coming along nicely. So I thought I would do a quick tour and just talk a little bit about what's mostly a native wildflower garden here in North America. You can see that we have some foxglove or digitalis. The bumblebees love it, and I just saw one come in. There he is. So we do try to do things to attract the insects, which in turn then attract birds. And in fact, this birdhouse here had house wrens in it earlier this year. They've just come out within the past week or so. And as we kind of look around, there's a bloom coming up. Let's see if I've caught it up here. That's an oak leaf hydrangea, this whole enormous plant here. And behind it is some native witch hazel, which is doing what witch hazels do. They get very tall, and then as they get tall enough, they begin to bow over, and where they touch ground, they will, I think they will reroot and then continue to spread. These guys here are something precious too, to the left and right. They are hornbeams, American hornbeams, also called musclewood. And if you can see, their branches tend to be very horizontal. They used to be used for making handles for tools because of the, well, generally the straightness of the hornbeam branches. In this case, it's not quite so perfect, be that as it may. And in the background, you can't see so much, but we're fortunate enough to be surrounded by some basswoods, also called lindens, and a set of white oaks and red and black oaks kind of all around the yard that give this sort of a large overhanging canopy. As for a couple of other things in bloom, the yellow flowers here I'm not familiar with, but the pink ones are rose campion, which I believe is part of the carnation family. I'd have to double check on that. And of course, we're not fully native wildflowers. We have hostas here, there, and everywhere. But these guys here, if you are familiar with bleeding heart, this is a different variety. It may be one called squirrel corn. I think there's a lot of different bleeding heart, a lot of different species in the overall family of the bleeding heart is in, and so I don't know the names of most of them, but generally you can recognize it by the texture of the leaf and the sort of flowers they've got. We also had in here somewhere Dutchman's breeches, which is another one of those bleeding heart derivatives. And then ferns, we absolutely like ferns. There's some painted ferns here, and to the right this stuff is called lungwort. What's unique about that, when it blooms, it's already past its blooming time, but it has flowers of different colors. So it will have on the same stem some pink and purplish bluish flowers, which is kind of nifty. Here we have some jack in the pulpit. I don't think we have any. The pulpits have already bloomed, and as you can see, it's starting to turn into these green seeds that are showing up, and this will eventually turn into like bright red seeds. The seed pod's really something else, but again, a very distinct North American flower and plant. You can see them in places in these enormous fields. Another kind of fern here, a Christmas fern, and behind it we have some, I think that's an Asian Pachysandra. We have some native as well, but telling the two apart can be a little challenging. Actually, you know what? I think this is the native, and the Asian version has a glossier leaf. And then behind it we have lots and lots of hostas. Yes, they are not native, but they are well behaved. They do well in shade. They're fairly indestructible. So they are another kind of, let's say, perennial favorite. And this guy here you probably would not recognize. This, and I'll go close up to the leaves. This guy here is a kind of viburnum, and there's a huge number of different bushes in the viburnum family, but this one in particular is a cranberry bush, or known as high bush cranberry. So that's one of the things around here that we're known for. So we have our own token cranberry bush. Again, it's also already flowered out. It has really beautiful flowers, but now it's just sort of providing texture to the garden. And then another one of my favorites here, these enormous guys here are called mayaples, and I actually know the Latin name of these. It's Podophyllum peltatum, and we won't see any fruits probably, but they grow in these enormous double leaves, and then beneath here, when they don't get eaten by animals, you'll get these very large berries that are toxic until it's fully ripe. And if you're lucky enough to catch one when it's ripe, which is difficult, they're also known as a hog's apple and other such things. When it's actually edible, it's a tasty treat, a very large seedy berry. And then this guy here is, you could say it's just a weed, but weeds also have names and personalities, and this one here is known as whorled loosestrife. The reason being these are the whorls, and then the loosestrife is a particular, again, family or category of plants. This beauty here, well, it's been kind of decimated by rabbits, but it's making a comeback. It is a sweet pepper bush, and that's another one of these local flowering plants. You can see the flowers are now starting. It's going to be really fragrant. It's around here you bump into them in very large fields of them surrounding swampland usually, and there's so many of them that you just get this wonderful fragrance that comes off of it. It's well, like going through a field of flowers. And then here, these guys are probably familiar with them, brown-eyed Susan, also known as Rudbeckia. They're actually from my dad's place. He had them growing wild in his rather large rural yard, so I grabbed a couple and brought them home, and they've been here for 15-20 years now. And so, yeah, this is the garden, more ferns. There's kind of ferns scattered all throughout. These guys here are known as widow's tears, and they're actually terribly invasive, so we always end up pulling most of them out in order to keep them from overwhelming the place. Irises, they're already past their prime, and again, just blending texture now. More hostas. Back here, this guy is what's called a trumpet weigela. I think it's already flowered. I'm not quite sure. It used to be a lot more flowerier, but because we have this enormous yew that's growing over it, it's been shaded out quite a bit. And then these big sticks coming up are known as actia, and they're going to make these enormous sour smelling blooms that, again, the bees really love, so we'll end up having bumblebees all throughout the place. And then this guy here was a recent addition. You can tell the leaf is very distinct. No, it's not a sassafras. It is a tulip tree, and it is not old enough yet to bloom with any tulips, but it is something to see when it does. And then in back here, this is known as a fothergilla, which is a swampy, another one of, gosh, I have a lot of swampy things around here. Another swampy denizen that we've brought here into the garden. Most of these things do bloom earlier in the year, so we've kind of missed its prime, but that's the nature of a garden. It's always changing, always always new things to see and old things that are cycling out. And then finally this guy, I think I'll end it here. To the left we've got, this is called twin leaf or Diphthila jeffersonia. I don't see any seed pods. It's got a really nifty seed pod which looks like a little bucket, and then the lid opens and the seeds pour out. It's kind of a funny little plant. Then of course these should be very familiar to almost anybody. That is a particular kind of strawberry, I think a barren strawberry. But I wanted to end with this guy here because he's a little bit special too, and it is a, now I'm blanking on the name, hellebore. Hellebores bloom in the winter and they look like plastic flowers that you buy from like a cheap store. It almost doesn't look real, and so it's kind of a unique plant that you can add when there's nothing else blooming in the middle of January, February. It will be out there doing its thing. So anyway, thank you for coming with me on my little tour of the garden. There's always lots more to see. Ice dance grass, so on and so on and so forth ad infinitum. But this is, well, the fortunate environment that I'm fortunate enough to live in a place like this where we can enjoy being in something that feels a little bit rural even though we are in the city. And with that, I will say bye for now.